29 years ago, the brother next to me helped put East Harlem on the map, which was very impressive for me because prior to these guys, no one represented East Harlem the way that they did. I would like to introduce my man McKinley from the Zhiggy Tribe. What's up, my brother?
What's going on, fam?
How you doing, man?
Everything good, man. We go way back.
Yeah, way back, man. I know, you can see the grades, man.
Oh, yeah. Wisdom.
All right, got a few questions to ask you, man. Hopefully we could, enlighten our viewers, man. Let them know what's been going on. And it makes me think to this Gangstar song that I used to listen to back in the days, where it was an interlude, and they were saying that, if you don't school the youth with wisdom, that the sins of the fathers will come back and revisit the kids.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm hoping that, we could shed some light and kind of like, just enlighten people, man, and just kind of like let them know what your journey's been like, man, and the jewels and the blessings that you can share, man.
Cool, man. It's for the youth.
Right. So get into a little bit about you, man. When you was younger, do you remember what you wanted to be and do when you grew up?
I mean, growing up in Spanish Harlem and in East River Projects in particular, I actually grew up in Queensbridge Projects because that was like really my baby years, maybe from 2 years old to maybe 8 or 9, you know what I'm saying? I was in Queensbridge Projects, but I was always coming back and forth to Spanish Harlem because the majority of my family, both mother and father's side, was from, 102nd, 1st Avenue, East River, Washington Projects. I mean, also Metro North. So growing up, it's like almost most of the kids growing up in the hood, growing up in the projects, you don't even think you're going to live to see 20.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And that's always in the back of your mind because, you see so many of your patrons, a lot of our friends started dying in, junior high school, 12, 13 years old. And, some of them dying violently, you know what I'm saying? So, seeing that, you don't really look too far into the future. And then, of course, the broken home, the mother, the single parent raising you, and, she has to work. So now the streets is raising you, TV's raising you. So you don't really see too far into the future. And so for the most part, as a youth, I was living day by day, and I was living for that day.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But of course, as far as like saying as a kid, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or, a teacher. When the schools used to, because I did a lot of counseling growing up, you can imagine. And whenever they asked me that question, I would just be like, I wanted to be a lawyer because I was one of those people that liked to debate.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, as a lawyer.
All right, so that's cool. So you wanted to be a lawyer. So then at some point, you kind of switched focus and wound up discovering the music thing or whatever. What was that about?
Yeah, so like we had a little crew. This is basically what it all boiled down to because we went to the park jams and we had our fun in the hood. I used to stay up listening to Mr. Magic, The Rap Attack, Red Alert.
Shout out Mr. Magic.
Early and mid 80s when rap really started taking over the sound waves. Goldie Hot Tracks and of course Ralph McDaniels.
And so, yourself, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So like that was our era, and that's what I was like more or less my introduction into the music.
Right.
But it really started like not for nothing in the parks because brothers would bring out their boombox, or occasionally you'll have the brothers that come outside with their equipment. And then, you get the battles over here and then the people over here, dancing, singing along, people standing next to the speakers, and the whole community would come out. And initially in the beginning, it wasn't too much violence, even though things would jump off. But for the most part, we were out there to have fun. So that was my little introduction into the music. You know what I'm saying? It's like that old school vibe that we were going through. I'll never forget the first time I heard the Beastie Boys and couldn't believe that they were white. You know what I'm saying? Like, it caught me off guard completely. But I remember hearing it before I actually seeing it. We come from that era when we heard the music. And so we fantasized on how the artist would be. Right. You know what I mean?
It's so funny because I know talking to, my younger brothers or whatever, now that rap is like this multi-million-dollar industry. I was telling them way back then, you know, cats wasn't doing it for the money. Cats was just making music just so they can hear it on the radio, so they could just be like, yo, this is us or whatever.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a thing to have fun with.
Right.
And nobody thought that rap would take it to the multi-billion-dollar industry that it is today.
Right.
I mean, they just thought that it was going to be something that stayed in the hood.
Right.
And that the kids from the hood would create and appreciate.
Right.
You know?
Right. I hear you. What would you say was the biggest factor that helped you be successful? Like I said, you know, coming out of, you know, I'm just hearing that you was from Queensbridge, also, you know, East Harlem. But coming out of East Harlem, what was one of the things that you think helped you guys, your crew, to be successful with the rap?
And this is it's going to sound crazy, but actually what helped us was leaving the block. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like not hanging around here like that.
Right.
You know, I had my little tenure and we used to wild out and do our little things on Halloween and stuff like that. And, you know, we played our basketball games, football games, and we got into our fights. I didn't start experiencing other things until I actually left the block. Wow. And so that was a blessing in disguise, because the guys that I was hanging with were guys that wanted more, wanted to see more. And so we didn't just stay put in the neighborhood. We more or less ventured out. Right. And started experiencing and exploring new things. And that basically was what led us to, you know, landing a record deal, because we were just at the right place at the right time. Wow. It probably wouldn't have happened if we would have just stayed on the block.
Right. Would you say, were there any mistakes that you guys made along the way that you think?
Plenty of mistakes. I mean, you know, as you grow up, you live and you learn. You know what I'm saying? The Bible says something about, like, if you don't have a father in your life, you make decisions as if you're drunk every day.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so we come from that, you know what I mean, the single parent homes. And so a lot of decisions that we made were off, because we relatively had to raise ourselves as young black males,
Right.
growing up in a woman-dominated community.
Right.
Which, when you think about it, is really just Hispanics and blacks that have the women head of the household.
Right.
Whereas you go to other, you know, nations and people, they more or less it's the man. It's established that it's the man that runs the house,
Right.
you know, and they discipline the kids or whatever. And so at the end of the day, we all know that a woman can't raise a man.
Right.
You know, she can raise a son, she can nurture that son, but she's not going to know what it takes to become a man.
Right. So it's almost in a sense like you were constantly in survival mode.
Yeah, of course, because, you know, it was, you know, we come from an era where it took the cops a while to get there.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so things used to happen, and, you know, you never know when you was going. That's why I said, like, I never thought that I would live to a certain age, because I just felt that something would happen that would end my life.
Right.
Or I would end somebody else's life and go to jail for the rest of my life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't look that far into the future, because I didn't see anything coming good out of it.
Right.
For the most part, because I was a product of my environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so what would you say was probably one of the hardest decisions you had to make?
Wow. One of the hardest decisions.
In terms of, I guess, with the music and, you know, like going on tours or seeing things that you guys were seeing, or even, because you guys successfully did a first album, but the second album, I believe you guys went into the studio and...
Yeah, I mean, you know, not knowing the industry, not knowing the business, and then the business was actually making a turn for the worst, if you ask me. I mean, the music was still good, but it was kind of demonic on the subject matter and what was being talked about and what was being portrayed and promoted. So, you know, I come from that last era of actually wanting to do music to have fun,
Right.
going to the clubs to dance
Right.
and have fun. But right when our deal kind of ended, you're talking about maybe 92 to 93, 94, it just started being overwhelmed by the gangster rap.
Right.
And a lot of things in me make me believe that it was done intentionally, because think about how much death came from that.
Right.
You know, and so now, you know, we had Scott LaRock, who passed away in the 80s, and, you know, you've heard of other rappers here and there, you know, but by the time 96, 97 came around with Tupac and Biggie, it started happening more frequently, and now it's to the point where there's rappers dying almost every week.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And violently.
Right.
You know, and it all has to stem from something, right? Because there's a reason everything happens. And so, you know, logically you would look at it and say, you know, it got to be the music and what was being spoken about in the music, because music is hypnotizing,
right?
You know, and if you say a hook enough times, you start to believe that hook,
right,
without even realizing you're believing it,
right?
You know.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you made a very interesting point. I think you guys' album, I know it came out in 1992, and I want to say around 93, something very interesting was going on in hip hop, like you had touched on, where it started taking like more of a negative route. So if you were basically coming out talking about let's have fun, let's dance, let's have a good time, there wasn't any airways, no one was really supporting that. You know, it was all about, it had to be about gangster rap at that particular point. And being a hip hop connoisseur that I was, you know, because I was the guy at the record store every week buying new albums or whatever. And, you know, I just remember in 93 picking up, you know, certain artists, and I'm just like, yo, what happened? It doesn't sound the same. Like, it just, the energy just felt different, man. It just felt different, and it felt darker. So, you know, when you're coming out talking about toss it up or raking in the dough, 93, that wouldn't have the same impact because, like you said, it just started like, it transitioned or whatever, you know. It was all about murder, 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 kill, kill, kill.
Yeah, who had the hardest crew and who fights and who been to jail and who can shoot who.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, not for nothing, I probably been around more than that than a lot of these rappers that was out there talking that. But I never looked at, coming from Harlem, we was about having fun. You know what I mean? We went to the party to dance. We didn't go to the party to play the wall.
Right.
You know, think about the old school rappers. Like, you was a herb or you was a cornball if you just came to a party and stood against the wall.
Right.
And most of the party jams were promoting people to get out there and dance.
Right.
Go out there and have a good time. Try to talk to the girls. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you would go to a party. I mean, you ain't going to a party so that at the end of the night you at the damn emergency room.
Right.
You know, what the use of going, and if you got to bring a gun to the party, you shouldn't go to that party.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because now you ain't even there to have fun.
Right.
You're more or less there waiting for something to happen. And that energy is being perpetuated. When you put that energy out, usually it comes right back. So if you go out there looking for something to happen, more than likely it did. And a lot of people lost their lives because of it. I mean, I remember there was a time when we were going on the road, even when I was like with YZ, and we used to dance for him. And every night that we were out, somebody got shot.
Wow. So
we would do the show, right? It was cool up until the show started, because usually the show was the last event of the party, right? So you talking about we get on stage at 1, 2 in the morning. We do the show. People was in good, you know, good vibes or whatever, for the most part, from what you can see. You know, we come in that time, coming late. We go right to the backstage, and then we get on stage. We do our thing. We look in the crowd. It looks like people are having fun. And then as soon as we get off stage, we go backstage, you just hear the commotion. And this was every night. And now they're rioting, they're fighting, they're throwing stools, bottles at each other. And then outside, you hear the gunshots. And this was like every time. It was almost predictable. And then by the time they get us outside, finally, to take us to the hotel, and we outside, all you see is people on the floor with blankets over them. It was crazy. And this was every night. And I'm talking about, because a lot of times the clubs wouldn't have hip-hop night on a major night like a Friday or Saturday night. So hip-hop nights used to be Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe a Thursday, maybe even Sunday was hip hop night. And to see all of that going down, you know what I'm saying, and it being such an unsafe environment, it took away a lot from hip hop and from people actually, you know, getting into it in a positive way. Because like around the time also when we were coming up, there was a lot of conscious rap.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And people were back to Africa. You had the Black Panthers. You had, you know, Egyptology. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, you had some religious groups. You had the gospel rap or whatever the case may be. But you had rappers that were, you had the native tongue with the red, black, and green, go back to Africa. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't wear gold. They would wear the black medallions. And that thing was perpetuated. We let our hair go out the way we wanted it to. It wasn't about being combed. We loved our look. We loved our women. It was all about positive vibes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then something happened, whereas, you know, gangster rap just took over. And I just wanted to make one other point, because it was mainly New York, and because New York started going to the gangster rap too once they started seeing the success of the West Coast doing it.
Right.
And so now you have the two coasts strictly pause as hard as they can be, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of like fights and things came out of that, and then it of course escalated to the whole East Coast West Coast beef, right, where people were dying, you know what I'm saying? But it's funny because then the South came, and the South kind of like brought the fun back to rap, because they had dances for every track that they were dropping, and people were dancing along in the club, and it was like something that you went to go do. Not to say that they weren't fighting and things weren't happening that were negative, but for the most part, they became successful, the Ludacris, the Outkast, because they brought the fun back.
Well, you know, I heard something interesting regarding the South, and I forgot who I heard it from, but you know, they were saying one of the reasons for the South, because I mean, I'm sure you've been down to Atlanta and stuff like that, and one of the things that was big down there were like the strip clubs. Yeah. And they were saying that, you know, at one point, you know, especially early, well, the mid to late 80s or whatever, like with the majority of the rap coming out of New York, you know, and there was like this political, you know, fight the power type stuff or whatever was doing really well, the pro-black stuff. They couldn't play that in the strip clubs because it kind of like countered the whole strip club pro-black thing or whatever. So they were saying one of the reasons why like places like, you know, Luke down in Miami and down south started coming out with their music was predominantly so that they could play it in the clubs. Yeah. You know, which is why, you know, there were certain songs that came out that I'm like, I don't understand, like, why is it so popular? Yeah. But then if you played it in, you know, a different element, then it's just like, oh, okay, now this works or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's, you know, and then there goes the negative side of it as well. You know what I'm saying? It was like basically it's the moral fabric of America, and in the black community in particular. We don't have a lot of positive stories in America. Right. You know, a lot of it was negative, and how we came up as people. We went through the fire in this place. You know what I'm saying? And so it shows. It shows in how we act, how we dress, and what we listen to on our music. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, the strip club was a heavy reason why a lot of that fun rap came back that didn't have too much content. Right. As far as speaking about issues and trying to rally the people, you know what I'm saying? Because you can't rally the people with the black fist in a strip club. Like, you know what I'm saying? It kind of defeats the purpose. Right, right. You know, and so then it gets dangerous when you want to have too much fun. Right. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I always felt that music was supposed to be inspirational, and that's why artists like KRS-One and Rakim, and you know what I'm saying? These were the artists that, you know, they were dealing with the science and with the mathematics of the 5% Nation and history, and but they would do it to a funky beat. Right. You know what I'm saying? So you could dance and learn something at the same time, and that was the medium that needed to be captured in hip hop. Right. That I felt was lost somewhere down the line. Right, right. Yeah, KRS coined that as edutainment. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You can still dance to it, but you learning something. Right. So someone who has tasted, what type of advice do you think that you can give to someone who probably wants to go that venture or go that route or whatever? Yeah, let me tell you something, man. Even back in the days, man, you talk about medieval times, like the time of Beethoven and Mozart and people like that. You know, you had to have money, man. Music was like for the affluent, especially the people who created the music. Like, you didn't have too many responsibilities. You probably had a lot of your bills paid. You might have had a farm that was tended to, and you had you know, back then money was goats and sheep and things and cattle. So you didn't necessarily have to go out there and bust your butt and work with your hands. You had time to go and learn a piano or learn a flute, or, you know, sit down and write poetry and write songs, because it was something that the rich would be able to do because they never had, you know, too much manual labor to accomplish day to day that would get them by. So they had time to do all of these things. You know, now it's kind of difficult to get into the arts, and that's any art. And that's why they have a lot of programs that support the arts, because it's difficult if you got to pay rent, you got a car note, you got a phone bill, electricity, but you're trying to sit down and get into this music. You know, and that's one thing that people have to take into consideration trying to do the music. It's like, are you going to, sacrifice a lot of your responsibilities? You know, there's a lot of people that do poetry or do music and they're homeless. You know what I'm saying? Because they're dying for the music, basically. You know, they're dying for their craft and what they want to do in life, as opposed to what needs to be done, which is basically take care of your family or pay bills so that you have a roof over your head. So you got to find the medium with that. And so it's difficult for the youth. Unless you got your parents to support you, it might be difficult to get into the music. And if you did have parents to support you, you got a small window to get some success or to get something started, because eventually your parents going to be like, no, get off your butt and go get a job. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to be taking care of you no more. And so as far as like with music, you know, I feel that as a hobby, it can be something that you can get into and you can do, but you gotta put your priorities in the forefront. You know, you got children and you still trying to do music, and you're not, getting a job or going to school so that you could finance your own career. Then, that becomes an issue, that becomes a problem. And I see too many people fall to that. You know, they just feel that they want to be successful, and they hear the success stories of people that just put everything to the side and lived out their cars, and then ended up becoming successful. But those stories are far and few. You rarely hear about, success stories on that level. For the most part, there's thousands, maybe even millions of people who want to be rappers, and they homeless right now, or they don't have a pot to piss in because they pursued their music career or pursued their dream without a logical plan.
I gotcha.
I
gotcha. All right, so if you could start over again, is there anything you would do differently?
I plead the fifth. I might hurt some feelings if I say what I gotta say.
All right.
Yeah, now, you know what? I say it like this, man. If you're gonna be in a group, y'all gotta be on the same page. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to be a soloist and you got a plan to put your people on, because I've seen that happen as well, still, even with the people that you're trying to put on and the people that you're running with, you got to have a plan. You got to all be on the same page. And so, you got to make sure, you got to prove your friends, and you got to make sure that everyone's there for the right reasons and that you go at it as a team. You know what I'm saying? Because really nothing can be done on your own. You want to start a business, you want to, start a school, whatever it is that you want to start that's major, that might have an impact in the world, you're going to need a team. You rarely hear stories of people doing it by themselves, right? So even the people that get all the money, so you would think from the outside they did it by themselves, they still had lawyers, accountants, and people in the background supporting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you just have to get with a strong team, and then you can hopefully make these dreams come to light. Because, two heads is better than one. So you get, more people involved, but everyone has a common goal and everyone is really there for each other, supporting each other, then beautiful things can happen. Right. But all it takes is one person who has a selfish mind that could destroy it all. So,
right.
But as far as doing things differently, you live and you learn, right? And you go through things that make you the person that you are. So in a lot of ways, the old saying, if I'd have knew back then what I know now, we can all say what we could have, would have, should have done. You know what I'm saying? So like in a lot of ways, I wouldn't change anything because everything happens for a reason.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think of the current state of hip hop and the direction that it's going in?
Yeah, like hip hop right now is it's promising because you hear some good music coming out. The content still needs to be upgraded. And so I just feel that these hip hop artists need to be smarter. And what I mean by that is because they might be able to make a beautiful beat to a very catchy hook, but then the content is like nothing, is not inspirational anymore. And I feel that the youth has to inspire the people. That's what music is there for, is to inspire people, not to get them into a mind state where they want to kill people, or she feels that she got to shake her butt in order to, be accepted. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's genres and different types of hip hop for everyone. right? And so you stay in your lane. But then you gotta like realize who runs this game, who's running the record labels. There aren't any really record labels anymore because of this whole digital, domain, and then people being able to just stream, or you don't buy records. There's no more hardware being sold. But who's controlling the radio stations and the video shows? Because those are the ones that are promoting the content. Remember, if you let someone hear something long enough, eventually, even if they hated it initially, they might just like it. And they find themselves singing the song. And so if you put a song on the radio talking about kill, murder, kill, shake your butt, and that becomes into a dope beat, a catchy beat, then people hear that over and over again, and it becomes part of the fabric and part of society. And now you see everybody doing it and duplicating it and trying to revamp it, but it's still the same message. You know what I mean? So you got to put blame more or less into the people who are actually running hip hop, because they're looking at it like, oh, people didn't come to the party. Remember, you guys, it's tricky. People didn't come to the party to bring a dictionary and learn. People came to the party to party. Yeah, but partying doesn't mean shaking your ass and talking about who you're going to kill at the end of the night.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we just have to be more mindful on what we promote and what we put out there, right? Because like you have rated PG in the movie theaters, right? So that under 13, PG-13, under 13, they might not be able to take that content. It might be a culture shock to them. They might not react the way you want them to react. They might not even think that it's a movie. They might think it's real life. So they put those warnings out there to let people know, listen, be careful when you bring your child to the movie to watch this movie, because they might see some things that might be detrimental to the child as far as what they can understand at that age. And I feel that hip hop and the radio stations and the video shows should do the same thing. There's an audience for everyone. Okay, so if you want to put certain music out, then play that music, even if because what they do is tricky. They'll put a song talk about kill, murder, and then they delete the curses. But the message is still kill, murder. Right. Are you thinking you're doing us a favor by deleting the curses? Not really, because the kids still get the message. They just don't hear the curse, but they know the curse word. They know what part go there, and they say it in their house. Right. You know what I'm saying? So like that's the trickiness of this industry, and what this, the devils that run it, this is what they promote. You know what I'm saying? And so now look at Lil Nas X with this whole homosexuality campaign that's going on. And imagine watching the video when we were coming up in the early 80s of a dude grinding like a stripper on the devil on his throne. What?
Couldn't even imagine that.
Where does that come from?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the fact that can even be on the airwaves. And then mind you, that wasn't his first video. His first video was Old Country Road, which was a song that the youth embraced, and most of his fans are kids. Right. And it's really because of that song. Right. They did it with Cyrus or whatever, the father. Billy Ray Cyrus, you know what I'm saying, to promote it even more and to get it out there on the pop culture. And then, you fast forward a couple of videos and albums, and now he's on the devil grinding. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? And so that's what makes me think that a lot of this stuff is planned out. Right. And it's just to change the fabric of society. And it's only bringing, death and destruction to our youth. Right. Our youth should not be seeing things like that. You know what I'm saying? So you might as well just play pornos on Channel 2 at 3 o'clock after they get out of school, if that's the case. Because that's what these kids are basically watching with these music videos, and they can get on YouTube, and sometimes parents don't put the blocks on YouTube, and these kids have access to all types of crazy stuff. And most kids have phones right now with internet, and their parents are at work. They can't watch them 24/7. And so these young kids are growing up in a way where they become the adults soon, and they're going to raise their kids, and it's getting worse. Right.
All right, so you basically answered my next question. So how important is history for our people, would you say?
Oh, man. So when you say our people, I'm thinking you're talking about blacks and Hispanics for the most part. Yeah, I mean, our history is unknown to our people. You see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times it just starts off when the conquistadors with the Hispanics, once the conquistadors got there, because if you ask them what language did the people on those islands speak in Mexico and in the islands in the Caribbean, what language did they, and in South America, what language did they speak before the conquistadors got there? They couldn't tell you. So that goes to show you right then and there, because they weren't speaking Spanish.
Right.
That goes to show you right there that they lost their history. Same thing with the blacks, you know, so-called black people that live in America. When they got here, they weren't speaking English. So it's like, what language were they speaking when they got here, and where did they come from? Right. You know, because from my studies, you'd be surprised, the first slaves did not come from Africa. The first slaves lost power in Europe. So they came from Spain and from Portugal. Right. And a lot of people don't know this. Yeah. So what were black people doing in Spain and Portugal? How about ruling for 1,000 years? Right. Let's get into that history, because that history can basically let us know why we're in the condition we're in today. Right. You know what I'm saying? So history is very important, and more people need to read. You know, there's an old saying, man, that the slave masters came up with. It's like, hey, you want to hide something from a nigger? Put it in a book. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because our people do not take it upon themselves to go read. They only read when they're told to, because they got to make money. Right. They don't read and try to learn things on their own, which we should do. Right.
And not only put it in a book to hide it from them, but we're also going to make it illegal to teach them how to read.
Oh, a lot of the older books, if you buy books from the 14th, 15th, and 16th century, they put all the truth into the books, and you'd be surprised what you learned. And the reason why they put that information in those books is because as slaves, we couldn't read. So they ain't have nothing to hide from us. Right. It's the new books that you would buy now, that to the point where they even trying to take slavery out of the history. So you go to school now and you see your kids, they're learning in the schools, and they're not learning about slavery. I mean, they basically calling us indentured servants, as if we were getting paid for it. Right. You know, and then they did us a favor by bringing us over here. When in all actuality, they were feeding our kids to alligators, and they were lynching us left and right. Right. And they were feeding us to slop. And they considered us 1/3 of a human being, right, and basically treated us like cattle. And so that truth, that history also has to come out, because it puts things into perspective. Because a lot of our people think that we're free now, but you can't leave this country unless you got a passport. You know what I'm saying? And if you break one small law, you're going to be locked up, and then you really see that you ain't free, that you don't have no type of freedom in this country, because you can't move around the way you want to. Right. Free for what? They always try to talk about equality. They're always talking about equality. Equality where? Where do you see equality? I can go on the roof of this building and look downtown Manhattan, and I'll see thousands of beautiful, tall buildings, and our people don't own not one. So where's the equality there? There is no equality. We got to deal with reality. We're not free. We're not considered equal in this country. The only defense that we have as a people is sticking together. We got to stop hating each other. We got to stop killing each other and doing detrimental things to each other. And a lot of that comes from hating yourself. So that you hate yourself, you hate people that look just like you, right? And you treat the people that really treat you wrong. It's called Stockholm Syndrome. They did studies on people that were kidnapped and held in basements. But because that person kidnapped them and held them tied up in a basement, but because that person kept feeding them, they looked at that person as
like a savior.
As a savior, yeah. And you know, and so like even when the cops finally did come and saved them from that predicament, they didn't want anything bad to happen to that person, because they looked at it like, well, that person was feeding me every day and giving me water. You know, and they took care of me, took care of you. They kidnapped you and took you away from your family. But you over a period of time, you become submissive to the point where you actually love that person, and you don't want to see no harm come to that person who kidnapped you, was probably raping you, could have tortured you initially, but because they fed you, you know, you love this person. Our people have that Stockholm Syndrome in this country because we've been used and abused, but because we get welfare, because we get food stamps, we love those people. Because we feel they don't even have to do that. You're right, they don't. They do it so that you don't hate them. Right. You know what I'm saying? But we still at the bottom of society. We still are redlined where we can't move into certain neighborhoods. We're still looked upon and watched in the stores for stealing and things of that nature. We're put in a predicament where we are poor and we have to like do things to survive that are not always good. And they try to tell us to pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. Don't you know that before, if you would have spoke to the common or average white person before slavery ended, They would tell you that we were the most upstanding people. We come from good families. You know, there was hardly any divorce. You see what I'm saying? But as soon as the so-called Emancipation Proclamation was put in place and we were supposedly free from slavery, chattel slavery, and they can actually pay us for work, that's when we became lazy. That's when we became criminals. That's when they put in the law book that if you do commit a crime, they can put you back into servitude. And that's why the jails are full with blacks and Hispanics working for like 13 cents an hour. Which is slavery. Yeah, which is slavery.
All right, so what events happened in your life that shaped and made you the person you are today?
Wow. I mean, you know, when you grow up, one of the major things that happened is my mom's and pops broke up. And I know I'm not the only one, you know. Mom bounced on old man, you know what I'm saying? Then we moved to Manhattan.
Oh, how old?
You know what I'm saying? I was about 10 years old, you know what I'm saying? My little brother was like 7, 8, you know what I'm saying? And that was a major thing because, you know, we remember waking up in the morning and, you know, for Christmas, and you got the tree, and, you know, you got the train set. I had my Star Wars figures. You know what I'm saying? I remember one year I woke up and I had the pinball machine, the life-size one that they put in the bars and stuff, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, you come from that to now you broke up and you on the cheese line. Like, you know what I'm saying? It has an effect on you. Like, you got to go to the store now with colored money. Like, so you don't want to go to the store where you know everybody. You walking 20 blocks so you can go somewhere where nobody know you to spend that booklet that they used to give you. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and then of course, the drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, the majority of my family was on, you know, crack, and I had an aunt that died from heroin. You know what I'm saying? And you just saw how the fabric of the family was just disintegrated because of the drugs. You know what I'm saying? To the point where my pops used to walk right past me without saying nothing. You know what I mean? And that's what drugs do to you.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? It changes, you know, the whole relationship between the man and the child and the woman and the daughter and then the man and the woman. I was saying growing up in poverty, but growing up grounded to the point where I knew that having things doesn't necessarily make you a good person.
Right.
You know, I always go to the scriptures because the Bible's a very wise book that a lot of people don't understand. And Christ out of his own mouth said it's more likely for a camel to fit through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the gates of heaven. Because a lot of times these people that got money, man, they did some of the most abominable things to get that money, and they treated people, you know, very detrimental just to get ahead. Right. You know, they backstabbed and did all types of crazy things, lied, cheat, just to get ahead. You know, so it says also that money is the root of all evil. You know what I mean? So I didn't have a lot of clothes growing up, but I have a lot now, but I'll still go outside. You know what I mean? I wear scrubs every day because I'm at the hospital or whatever the case may be. And I don't really stress dressing. It's just that I like that feeling of knowing that if I wanted to, you know, dress up, I could. But I also have that knowledge to, you know, in the back of my head telling me that what I got on doesn't make me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What I possess and what I own doesn't make me.
Right.
You know, and just because you have more than a person doesn't mean that you're a better person.
Right. Yeah.
You know, what makes you better is how you treat people and the respect that you give out. Now, I'll tell people all the time, like when I was talking about when I was in the hospitals and whatever, and I would talk to the janitor the same way I talk to the doctors, and because of that, a lot of people don't like me. I'm never really looking for people to like me, but you're going to respect me. You know what I'm saying? That's the main thing is respect, because I always dish out respect. I always say also that a lot of the murderers and killers be some of the ones that I grew up with and ones that I know. They're some of the most nicest people ever. They're the ones that hold doors open for people, and when they see you in the street, they smile and say hi. You know what I mean? But those be the ones that'll murk you or kill you, or you know what I'm saying? Those be the ones that take disrespect very seriously. You know what I'm saying? So respect is always the key. That's the thing that gets you really far. You know what I mean? Being liked, you could be 100 with people and they still won't like you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and then being feared, you know, some people say they prefer to be feared than liked or loved, and yeah, but you know, if people fear you, there's a good chance a lot of the guys that were feared are dead right now. And the person who killed them was super scared of them. So fear, it only goes but so far. Respect is the key. Because when you have respect, people choose you to lead, as opposed to you appointing yourself out of fear, right? So you don't kill the whole a whole bunch of people to put yourself in a position, or you grease a bunch of palms with money to put yourself in a position where people don't respect you, and you got to watch your back 24/7 because you're always thinking that people are always going to want your spot because they know how you received it. But if the people get together and choose you to be the champ, that's respect. And that lasts a lot longer. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, you're still going to have people that's not going to like you or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, they have to respect you because you've been 100, you've been honorable. And that always lives on. You know what I'm saying? The people, you got to have like a certain, reputation of being a upstanding person. Right? And that reputation goes far.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you see it at that person's funeral. And you see the respect that they had because of what they've done for people. You know what I'm saying? But then, you'll go to another funeral and you'll see it twice as much people there, but you know that those people are only there because of the money that this person had.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Even though that person never did anything for anybody. And so you see the fakeness with that as well. So people treat people by what they have or what they can do for them as opposed to who they are.
Right.
And that's wrong, you know what I'm saying? But respect is the key.
I got you. My last question for the evening, man. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
But before you go, man,
shout out to Putt.
Before you go, what is your goals or aspirations for life and for the future?
Yeah, so like right now, man, you know what I'm saying? Me, pushing 50 and getting into my elder years and seeing my brothers going into their elder years and the grades coming out, and a lot of brothers has already passed away, and some of them naturally, what's quote unquote naturally, heart attacks and kidneys failure and things of that nature, cancer and stuff. Right now it's just basically trying to get the truth out, and so when we ask what is the truth, and so people have to go out there and search for the truth. And we have to be more open-minded because we come from a generation and from a people who was stripped of their truth. You know what I'm saying? But the truth is still out there. So we just have to obtain it. And you do that by researching, by asking questions, and by talking about it. Civil talk, you know what I mean? Not arguing and not fighting or anything like that, but more or less sitting down and coming to an agreement and doing the research. Because a lot of people talk about things that they have no idea about. And they make statements on preconceived notions that they didn't really research. They didn't really know the history, or they didn't really read the book, but they have this idea on what they feel that it is. And so, like Malcolm X says, because they have a TV mind and a TV vocabulary, they learn off of TV and off of what he said or she said. A lot of people don't want to go out there and do the knowledge for themselves. So my thing is to learn as much as I possibly can, to find the truth, and to share my information with as many people as possible, and particularly my people.
Gotcha. That's what's up, man. So, real quick, man, are you on social media? Man, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, BMac Waters. Also Facebook, BMac Waters. I don't really have a YouTube page. I'm planning on putting something together where, I'll do maybe a series or maybe even a podcast. But, everybody's podcast realm is flooded right now. So, you always try to do something different. And all this new technology is coming out. But for the most part, man, I tell people, try to travel. You know what I'm saying? Because traveling brings about wisdom also. Being able to see different things and moving around, not staying stationary in the same spot because you become stagnant. You want to be able to move out freely and go out there and explore the world and learn, you know what I'm saying? So, just being able to move around and go out there, find things out for yourself, research, become scholars, man. You don't necessarily have to go to these big colleges and spend all this money to be a scholar, man. The first person that gave out a degree didn't have a degree. They just knew what they knew. You know what I'm saying? So the best thing for you to do, man, is to just learn, because that's what your life journey is to learn as much as you possibly can and use the good for your benefit and put the bad to the side, man. You should be able to discern what's good and what's bad, man. Hopefully you should, because you'd be surprised nowadays. Nowadays, it's like people call evil good and good evil. You know, that's the type of world that we're living in. So that's the confusion that we're dealing with. So just got to go out there and learn, man, because that knowledge is out there, man. So, yeah, just learn the knowledge, man. Do the knowledge, like the 5%ers say. Do the knowledge.
Cool.
Peace.
Thanks again, brother.
Yo, thanks for having me.
I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you will always get an alert when a new video drops.